Lesson 11, History. 1. Do you like history? To be honest, I don't have special liking for history. I think that it's quite boring, and most of it have a lot of historical knowledge, such as the historical figures or events, events. All of things go over my head. For me, I always look up to the future, and I don't pay much attention about the thing happened in the past. So I really love the practical, and I am the practical person. So I just want, I always have the preparation for the present and follow the prospects forward. Do you think it's important to study history? I think that, as I said is before, history is not my cup of tea, but I think that is a play an essential element uh, for each country, because each country has own history. For me, it's just an old story remind people about historical figures and events and events. um, is give people in-depth understanding about the past, and then people can is make people have a good sense of pride and accomplishment about the construction, the nation construction and develop development history of ancestor. 3. Where you where do you study history? uh, you know uh, what, I start learning history when I'm a student at primary school. It's the first time. It's quite interesting. So I really love this subject. uh, for me, it's just an old story to remind people about history, his historical figures and events. I have a good sense of pride and accomplishment about nation construction and development history his, history of ancestor. However, you know, it have a lot of events. It have a lot of events and figures make me feel tired, and I can remember exactly uh, 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 detailed things. So I feel so stressed. How did you learn about history when you were a child? In my country, we have to learn world history and nation history. We have learned about historical figure and events. It's so long, and but each um, each of the thing are quite logic, so it's quite easy to remember. And then the teacher want to your want to the student have in-depth knowledge about country construction and development history of ancestor. But now, all of things go over my head, so I don't know exactly understanding that I have learned at school. I forget most of the understanding about history. Do you like history when you were young? I I would like to say that no, never, ever. It's made me so stressed and shocked with numerous historical figures and events. Um, it's quite hard for me to remember exactly its a detail or where or when it happened. Now they are truly out of my hand, go out of my mind. I don't know understanding that I have learned at school about this subject. So for me, it's just as a nightmare. That I don't want to remember today for this. Have you ever watched history film I don't have special liking for history film. More film about I think that's more film about this area is like a documentary films. So with a black and white screen. So I think that is too dull and boring. Um, you know, I think that's when I choose a movie to watch. Uh, More concentrated on the content as well as the quality of sound and image. Um, words I always can I always quite carefully to see a movie because I have to take time for this. So I hope that it will be worth it. Seven. Do you like TV program about history? Uh, I think that the TV program about history is not my cup of tea. When I was young, I'm so scared this subject is have numerous historical figures and events. It's take me a lot of time to learn, to remember, to practice and practice, to to pass the exam with flying color. So you know but now I never forget the like the the difficult time for me. It's just a nightmare. So I ignore anything about history. When was the last time you read about history? Whereas history, I don't have special liking for history, so I don't pay much concentration on this area. I read a history book years ago when I was a student at senior high school. I have to learn them to pass the final exam with flying color. It take me a lot of time to study, to learn, to remember all things. It's just a nightmare, and now I don't remember anything about understanding that I have learned at school. Part 3 on how history taught in Vietnam. You know, in former day, teachers conveyed the, the student a numerous understanding in the book. It They teach passively. Students just know the knowledge that they have learned at school. It makes the lesson become boring and tedious. History is such as a nightmare with millions of students in Vietnam nowadays. We have got a good method for teaching history, for teaching, uh, and in for teaching including history. Students have to do research. They need to do research and I think and have the group preparation for this subject at home and before starting at school. And teachers such as uh, tutor, tutor, tutor to help students understand this subject deeply. And students need to be self study for everything. So I think that if I know this method, um, you know earlier, I think that history is not my problem. Yeah, sure. Is there any difference between teaching history through books and movie, or what is effective way of learning history by reading book or watching video? I think that's learning history from film and TV program is quite interesting. People because we don't need much time to image, and I think that actor will help you know exactly about the events about the human and or living in the past. On the other hand, film less fantastic and facts. Therefore, people have to take care about information and that they have learned through film. And for me, I consider myself as bookworm, so I think that books help um, me have in-depth knowledge about history. However, I think that only reading book is quite, quite tedious and boring. So I think that if people combine, uh, have combination between books and film is, I think that is quite, like quite great method for all people. Three, why are there many children who do not like to learn history? I think that it's have numerous 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 reasons why children don't like history. First, I think that's various historical figures and events, and making them feel shock and stress for remembering and learning. And I think that the teacher cannot create the motivation and inspiration for children, and they just teach and teach, so tedious and boring. So and then I think that they don't know how to make the lesson become interesting and impressive. um, I think that in addition, the students don't have concepts of history. The teacher have and their parent a shadow responsibility to raise awareness of this issue. That's all. Do you, do young people like historical story in your countries? I think that it's on depend on each individual. I think that history such as an old story to remind people about historical figure and events, and through this, and after that, people can have a sense of bright rise and accomplishment about the nation construction and the development history of ancestor. So, um, and and for me, it's not history is not my cup of tea, and it is such as a nightmare. So I don't wanna remember it. I forget more of the understanding that I have learned at school. Which historical periods do you think is important in your country? I think all historical um, per- periods periods in my countries play essential parts for each um, individual in their each Vietnamese person. Always remember and look up to heroes and historical periods, prayers, prayers, periods, periods which contribute to what country is like today. And we always have a good sense of pride and accomplishment about country construction and development development history of ancestors. Do you think history master in country's future development? Yes, of course. We need to step back to see what happened in the past. If it's a good thing, we have to maintain and develop them to pass it on the next generation. If it's the bad thing or bad habit, we need to work out to to be suitable for country's future development. So I think that anything including a country's is able to become better version. Thank for history. I hope so. Seven. Do you think history will still be a school subject in the future? Yes, of course. I think that this is a mandatory in this day as well as in the future. What happened if the president don't know anything about their nation history is so dangerous, you know, because the from the other country can you know can take advantage of this, so they will they will fight her. like we make the world to to dominate the country so dangerous. And I think that people have to have in-depth understanding about historical figures and events. They can have a good sense of pride and accomplishment about country construction and development history of ancestor. And and after that, I think that history is like such like a basic background for development in the future.